Today, we are going to be talking about one of the biggest things your doctor will bring up when you come in for chronic bladder pain, the interstitial cystitis diet. I'm going to break down what this diet is, who is it for, who's it not for, and some of the biggest mistakes I see people make. I see a lot of people go about this diet the wrong way, so of course, I'll be mentioning all of those. Hi, I'm Alessandra, and I've been dealing with bladder and pelvic health issues for over 10 years now, and I have done all the diets. So today I want to talk a little bit about my experience with it, what's helped me, and what hasn't. And just a quick disclaimer before we get into diet. Interstitial cystitis, also called painful bladder syndrome, can involve a lot of different things, some of which can overlap. This includes pelvic floor dysfunction, nerve issues, mast cell activation and histamine issues, an embedded infection, and a bunch of other things. Diet may play a role for some people, but not for others, and I'm going to get into that today and what the research shows. The American Urological Association, the AUA, lists dietary modification as a first-line treatment for IC and bladder pain syndrome. This means it's literally one of the first things your doctor will recommend to you before trying any medications or procedures. The basic idea here is that certain foods and drinks can irritate the lining of your bladder and trigger flares. We're talking about frequency, increased urgency, pain, burning, and if you're watching this video, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. The most commonly reported triggers are things like coffee, tea, alcohol, citrus fruits, tomatoes, spicy foods, artificial sweeteners, carbonation drinks, and vitamin C supplements. Now here's the part that I see a lot of people get wrong, or at least I see people get it wrong on forums like Reddit and Facebook. This diet is not a life sentence, so I want to be really clear about how it's supposed to work. The IC elimination diet is not about cutting out everything forever. The goal is to temporarily remove potential triggers so you can find out which ones actually affect you. It's supposed to be there as a tool to help you figure things out. It's not supposed to run your life forever. For about 2 to 4 weeks, you only eat foods that are generally considered to be bladder friendly, low acid, no caffeine, no alcohol, nothing spicy. I think for me, when I was first starting out to establish a baseline for myself, I relied on oatmeal and chicken breasts unseasoned heavily. Again, this gives your bladder a chance to calm down and a baseline for you to compare against. During this phase, track your symptoms. How often are you going to the bathroom? What's your pain level like? What does your burning feel like if that's a factor for you? You need to know what your normal looks like on a clean diet before you can tell what specific food is making it worse. And I see a lot of people skip this step and then they have no baseline to compare to. Now, once you have that baseline established, you start introducing foods one at a time every 1 to 3 days. During this period, it's very, very important that you track your symptoms carefully. The idea here is that if a food causes your flare, you remove it. If it doesn't, it can stay in your diet. The goal is to build your personal safe list, not the internet's, not a list you saw online, yours. Because here's the thing, one person might totally be fine with tomatoes but can't touch citrus. Another person drinks coffee every morning while having no issues but flares from artificial sweeteners. I know this is something that I dealt with a lot. For so long, I thought that I couldn't have coffee, so I avoided coffee, and it was so sad because I love coffee. But when it got down to tracking my symptoms correctly, I found that coffee wasn't a flare for me at all. Everybody is so different, and Dr. Barbara Shorter herself said that some IC patients can eat black beans while others can't. Some can tolerate cooked onions but not raw. This is so deeply personal, and the only way to figure out your specific flares is to test them. So how do you know if the elimination diet is worth trying? If your flares seem to follow certain meals or drinks, diet modification is absolutely worth trying. If you notice your symptoms tend to spike after your morning coffee, or maybe after you've had something that's high in sugar, or you ate something acidic like pizza, that is a strong signal that maybe you should try the IC diet. Now, here's the flip side of this. If you've been strictly following the diet and you've noticed zero improvement, it's very likely that your symptoms are not primarily diet driven. And this is very useful information to bring to your doctor because it could very well change what they want to do next with your treatment. Also, I want to mention that some people's food triggers may be related to something else entirely. Gut issues like IBS can cause pelvic symptoms that feel exactly like bladder pain. Pelvic floor tension can worsen after eating, any eating, not just specific foods. Histamine intolerance can look a lot like icy food sensitivity, which is something that I struggled with personally as I have MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and these are all worth exploring with your doctor. When I was first diagnosed with IC almost 7 years ago, the elimination diet was the first thing that I did alongside pelvic floor therapy, and I want to tell you about what that looks like for me. As I reintroduced foods back into my diet, I paid attention to whether symptoms got worse or whether I experienced new symptoms. And I want to share something that I learned recently that's really helped me change the game in symptom tracking, and I'll call it the 3-time rule. If a food or drink caused a specific symptom event 3 times, then I would consider it a trigger. For example, something that still triggers me to this day is Diet Coke. When I drink Diet Coke, it doesn't matter what my symptoms are at, my burning, if it's a 0 out of 10, it'll jump to a 5 out of 10. If it's 3 out of 10, it'll jump even higher. The first time that I tried it during reintroduction, I noticed the increase, but I didn't just write it off immediately. I wanted to retest this because I love Diet Coke to confirm that it was a trigger. And this is so important because our bodies are so noisy. We have good days and we have bad days for all sorts of reasons. Stress, sleep, hormones, activity, all of the above can affect your symptoms. So one bad reaction after eating something doesn't automatically mean that that food or drink is your trigger. Real patterns appear when the same reaction happens several times under similar conditions. This is why I say always to look for triggers that repeat at least 3 times before you assume the cause. I want to encourage you to approach this by thinking like a scientist or a researcher. Start with a hypothesis. I think that my bladder flares are caused by eating tomatoes. Then test it. Remove tomatoes, track your symptoms, and then reintroduce them under controlled conditions and then see what happens. Go off of what you actually find and not what you're afraid of. I know something that I struggled with a lot is that I would have a food that was a common flare, such as coffee, and I would be afraid that would trigger me. But when it came down to actually looking at the numbers where I would label my symptoms 1 through 10, coffee really didn't affect my symptoms at all. And I want to end this video by talking about something that's not discussed enough in the IC community, I feel, and is that when the diet itself becomes the problem. If restriction is starting to feel obsessive, if you're avoiding social situations around food, or you're feeling anxious a lot of the time, please consider working with a registered dietitian who has experience with IC or pelvic health conditions. A lot of the time, insurance will cover this, and I didn't even know this until recently. And I also want to say this, if you've been following this diet strictly and you're not seeing improvement, bring this information to your doctor. It doesn't mean that you failed the diet, it just means that diet wasn't playing a role in your specific symptoms. And I know for me, when I found that diet didn't really help me too much, I was really scared that I would never feel relief, but eventually I did find my root cause, and now I have days, more days than not, where I am completely symptom-free. The goal of the IC diet is not to be afraid of food, it's to figure out what your body reacts to so that you can take back some of that control. Track your symptoms, do the elimination process properly, and use the 3-time rule. I think that repeated testing under controlled conditions is one of the most important things or tools that you can use to help find out what's causing your symptoms. And of course, work with a provider who actually listens to you. If you found this video to be helpful, please like and subscribe as it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this information. And of course, I'll include a list of free resources in the description below. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh, that was impressive.